InvestorIdeas.com podcast.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com podcasts. In today's podcast, I'm going to be looking at a few public company announcements from Audacious, trading on the CSE as AUSA and the OTC as AUSAF. KHRN Life Sciences Corporation, trading on the TSXV Venture as KHRN and the OTC QX as KHRNF. Zebra Brands Limited, trading on the CSE as XBRA, as well as DELC Holdings Corporation, trading on the CSE as DELC and the OTC as DELCF, as well as at the very end, I will also be talking about the new move from JP Morgan. So first starting with Audacious, who Terry Booth, the CEO, announced that the company has entered into a term sheet in regards to the formation of a strategic partnership with Golden Triangle Health, which is a subsidiary of NR Instant Produce PCL, which is a leading Southeast Asian food manufacturer and distributor based in Thailand, producing its own signature brands, private label products, and co-packaging lines. Now, Terry Booth, the CEO, commented, "This is an audacious partnership whereby we will take our know-how and IP and help our partner optimize operations, product development, and utilize our joint marketing and influence networks to establish a leader in the rapidly growing Asian CBD market." Now, Tom, who we know firsthand as an exceptional business executive with a strong track record in execution, and his team have built an amazing company already. Now, we've been in talks for some time, but everything accelerated due to our presence at MJ BizCon, which enabled us to meet face-to-face and execute on what we believe will be an exceptional opportunity to establish the Audacious brand internationally. Now, we're very proud of this partnership, and it makes us, to the best of our knowledge, the first international company with an operational presence in Asia legal cannabis market. Now, Mr. Booth then added, "We believe in the many benefits of CBD and we have the science to prove it. In our discussions with GTH have been diligent and the entire group is aligned with a strong strategy going forward. Tom is a charismatic man with tons of positive energy and a force to be reckoned with in the Southeast Asia, and Audacious looks forward to building our relationship with GTH and their partners globally." So some of the strategic rationale, the Thai market for CBD products is in its infancy, and as GTH projects the market to reach approximately $1 billion in Thailand in maturity. Hemp was authorized as legal in January of 2021, and a limited number of licenses were granted to the authorities to date, providing earlier move advantage to GTH. This positions Audacious to further international expansion. You can continue to read the points if you'd like in the article. And the purpose of the partnership is to develop GTH into one of the most meaningful CBD players in the Asian market. Audacious will provide advisory services, operational intelligence, including cultivation, manufacturing, and product development, and expansion of brand visibility in Thailand and beyond. And further, the potential exists for Audacious to become an export partner for GTH's Thai products portfolio to include CBD and hemp consumables, topicals, and hemp-derived commodities. And products will be sold under the GTH brand as well as through business-to-business channels under white label agreements. So Audacious focusing on the Thai and Southeast Asian market. I don't think they're actually the only company within that space right now. There are a few companies that have CBD products in South Korea as well as Japan. And I know that there is some talk of getting a few CBD products as well into China at the moment. I don't know how well that's going to go, as they are still one of the main CBD suppliers when it comes to just pure isolate, and one of the major hemp suppliers of the world. So I think breaking into that market will be somewhat difficult and maybe not as lucrative of a position. But again, when you're looking at other countries such as, again, South Korea and Japan, there already are some CBD products starting to show up. And I would expect in the rest of Southeast Asia, you're going to start to see at least CBD health products, probably more along the lines, the ones that have already been released in Japan and South Korea are more focused on like wellness creams, facial creams, things like that, more in the cosmetic side of the CBD market. And I do think that that'll probably be a bigger sell and a faster sell when you're looking at the Southeast Asian market at the moment. Again, because when you look at just general health and wellness products, there actually are a lot of products that are insanely cheap to produce that already exist and have a natural cultural heritage accepted within those cultures. So for instance, Kratom is one of those products that's kind of already out there, could be a competitor to CBD products in some sense. And again, there's already a lot of traditional Asian wellness products that exist in those markets. So I think for these companies, they'll have to be working and focusing on more high cost, top tier products, and that'll obviously bring its own difficulties with that. but that does seem to be probably what's going to be the faster seller. And this just shows in general that there is a trend for many companies starting to push towards the Southeast Asian markets, because that is sort of the next big key area that's going to be established, especially as Europe starts to develop its own production capacities and build out its markets a little bit more. Speaking of Europe as well, looking at KHRN Life Sciences Corporation, who announced the opening of a Zerenia clinic in the UK and London at its first international Zerenia clinic in Europe. And this collectively brings the company's total clinic count to 15 globally. Both virtually and in-person appointments can be made at the website at zereniaclinic.co.uk. So, the Zerenia Clinics UK will build upon KHRN's presence in the UK, which started in 2019, when KHRN became a founding member and also the exclusive Latin American supplier for Project 2021, which offers a subsidized pricing model for patients in the program to help address barriers to access in the UK market. And the company continues to focus on medical training for healthcare professionals after receiving full continuing professional development accreditation for this digital education platform and KHRN Academy, and it brings its proprietary clinical data generated in LATAM to the UK. Now, in the initial phase of the operation, Zerenia Clinics UK will focus on pain management and will then expand its therapeutic portfolio to other areas such as mental health, women's health, neurology, and oncology. And through prominently located in London's famous Chelsea district, Zerenia Clinics UK will initially focus on supporting patients digitally or via video consultations to enable streamlined access to patients across the UK, many of whom suffer from debilitating conditions. And the Zerenia Clinics UK follows the highest quality standards of personalized cannabinoid-based therapies and pursues precision-based medicine with the central goal to improve patient access to cannabinoid-based therapies. So I've talked about the Zerenia Clinics before. They've done well within their Latin American areas. And I do like this model when you're looking at, again, sort of medical expansion in a global sense. I think that KHRN Life Sciences has covered as many bases as you can currently within the current cannabis regulations sort of structure that currently exists when you're looking at a global sort of sense of the industry. And they've really focused on making sure that they have very specific certifications, that they follow very strict guidelines, that they're very consistent with how they're educating, with how they're administering, and with how they're keeping track of patient data and patient prescriptions. And I do think as well that their products have been proven to be quite consistent. They're working with their Colombian grown products. And this type of model, so the Zerenia Clinic in the UK, if this is well received and if it does continue to develop in the UK, and if you see other Zerenia clinics then start popping up in Europe, I do expect that this type of business model, at least for KHRN Life Sciences, you'll see them as sort of an international medical option, which will start coming into new markets. And I think that this will just prove really that they can be that type of medical establishment that can just build out and scale into different markets, and it doesn't matter which countries they're in. Again, they have a consistent product line, they have a consistent product supply, and it's cheap to produce and really high quality. They've been doing this for a long time. They have an insane amount of patient data, which is extremely valuable within the medical space within this industry today. And I just think that, again, when you're looking at the medical side, I don't think they'll ever be a competitor within the recreational side of things. That doesn't seem to be their focus at all, which I also am really grateful for, because most companies have spent most of their time trying to focus on recreational adaptation instead of the medical market. But I do think because of that, there's not a lot of players who can really compete in the same capacity as KHRN Life Sciences when it comes to their sort of international clinic model. And I do think you'll probably see, because of the launch of the Zerenia Clinic in the UK, a few more Zerenia clinics coming up in different parts of Europe over the next year. And again, that will just sort of set the foundation for them to become the main, or at least one of the main, medical international companies that's out there for cannabinoid therapies. Next, looking at Zebra Brands, also in Europe as well, who announced that it's commenced its preclinical cultivation of cannabis in the Netherlands. Now, it is one of 5 companies to be selected by the Dutch government to participate in a trial medical cannabis cultivation, and Zebra is endeavoring to be awarded one of the 2 licenses with a contract for up to 6 years, providing for revenue of up to 70.5 million euros to co-supply all pharma-grade cannabis to be sold in the Netherlands. Now, cultivation in the Netherlands is conducted by Zebra's indoor facility, and Zebra's specific genetic varieties are characterized by high production, compact flowers of excellent quality, and the taste terpene profiles with a grow cycle of 12 to 16 weeks. Now, Rodrigo Gallardo, president of XBRA, commented, "We're pleased to have commissioned our facility ahead of schedule and allowing us to conduct a pre-trial cultivation crop cycle prior to commencement of the formal trial in December." So I again have briefly mentioned some of these trial runs that you're seeing in different parts of Europe right now where they are focusing on their own in-house cultivation. The Netherlands one is probably one of the main ones that's going to be getting the most attention. Again, there's some developments going on in Germany. You're seeing some as well in there is a longer term sort of cultivation and cannabinoid program that's being developed in France as well. But I do think that, again, you're going to start to see more and more in-house cultivation as these industries start to pick up and as you have more clinic access and more ability for patients to get prescription cannabinoids. I think that the demand is going to obviously outweigh the supply for export and import at the moment. And you're going to start to see that these countries all look for their own in-house cultivation techniques. Obviously, the Netherlands has a really strong history of cannabis cultivation, cannabis genetic strains, and research. So I think that obviously for their in-house cultivation, there shouldn't really be any issues. Obviously, the biggest thing for them is keeping it very limited licenses so they don't become overburdened with so many different cannabis suppliers. But I think eventually you'll again see similarities between sort of oversaturated markets like California or Nevada, where there will be the option eventually for more micro cultivators to be popping up in these markets, as well as sort of big, large corporate entities that will be mainly just dealing with Cannabis 2.0 products with the medical community and with a lot of the sort of, the second generation product manufacturing, as opposed to really dealing with the cultivation side. Similar to what Valens does in Canada with a lot of their products, in that people just bring the product to Valens pretty much now to process into a second generation product. Lastly, looking at DELC Holdings Corporation, who released the full entertainment lineup for Meet DELC, the two-day premier psychedelic event on November 6th and 7th. From pop royalty dance performers and groundbreaking visual experiences to new technologies and research, thought-provoking presentations, and the world's largest psychedelic business expo, there will be something for everyone to explore. So you can look at the full lineup now, but just wanted to briefly mention that as it is coming up in the next week, actually at the end of this week. And will be an interesting thing to sort of gauge where the meter is at for the psychedelic industry as more of a business sense industry. I mean, there's a lot of attention towards psychedelics today. I think it's more on an individual level and people doing their own sort of experimentation. A lot of people experimenting with microdosing. I don't know if that really does as much benefit as people assume, and I think it does somewhat muddy the waters of real data and real discussions about the efficacy of these drugs. And I do think in general that model sort of not delegitimizes, but to some sense it makes these substances seem more benign than they are, in that we're trying to get people to take these substances in this sort of non-high, you're just going to take it like a vitamin pill every day type of setting. And I think that deep down for these substances, any psychedelics really, for them to be effective, they need to be in more of a therapeutic dose session or a shamanistic type setting where you're actually taking a higher dose, really focusing on what this experience is like and sort of immersing yourself in that moment, as opposed to taking your vitamin pill every day. I think that there's lots of benefits to medicinal mushrooms when it comes to pills, in that we probably should all be taking a few mushroom pills every day. Cordyceps militaris have been shown to be massively effective with dealing with respiratory diseases. Reishi mushrooms have a lot of benefits, and again, psilocybin in some small forms does have a lot of benefits, but I think that also that shouldn't be confused with the more psychedelic aspect. And hopefully these will be the types of things that get discussed at Meet DELC. But again, it'll be interesting to see what the general consensus is towards psychedelics, how business focused it is, how tactical all the wording is when we're talking about this industry within the context of this conference. But definitely something to pay attention to this weekend. And lastly today, one more thing, in recent news from MJ Biz Daily as well as Routers, they also both commented on the banking giant JP Morgan Chase & Co., who informed its brokerage clients that they will no longer be allowed to purchase cannabis-related stocks and securities starting November 8th. Now, Reuters on Tuesday cited an internal JP Morgan letter to brokers that said, in part, JP Morgan has introduced a framework that is designed to comply with the U.S. money laundering laws and regulations by restricting certain activities in the securities of U.S. marijuana-related businesses. Now, the New York-based bank's restriction applies to any company that has a direct nexus to marijuana-related activities, even those that aren't traded on major exchanges such as the NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, or the TSX. So after November 8th, JP Morgan clients will positions in marijuana companies will be allowed to liquidate their shares according to the bank's letter. Now, this pivot by JP Morgan is also similar to Credit Suisse Group, who told clients it was calling off all transactions involving marijuana-related companies in the U.S. earlier this year, which reportedly led to huge sell-offs of cannabis stocks. Now, U.S. Cannabis Council CEO Steve Hawkins called JP Morgan's decision beyond disappointing. JP Morgan's new policy is regressive and at odds with the majority of Americans who want legal regulated cannabis, and what's more, it's self-defeating, Hawkins said in a statement. Now, the end of federal cannabis prohibition is within sight, and the industry is already growing rapidly. I imagine more than a few JP Morgan customers will take issue with being blocked from one of the hottest industries on the market today, and JP Morgan is on the wrong side of history on this and will come to regret its decision. Now, industry CEOs also spoke out of this, such as Doug Chalupek, the CEO of Juva Life, trading on the CSE as JUVA, who commented, "This news is disappointing but not surprising. In the end, cannabis is still federally illegal, and most in the ancillary space, i.e. insurance, finance, brokers, suppliers, real estate, and regulators, have used this to their advantage to leverage high fees for typically lackluster services. This is just another blow to the already burdened industry, and you can mark this as yet another step backwards in what is supposed to be forward progress. This move will limit the growth of businesses who are working above board, already following a set of complex rules, further pushing the cannabis industry underground and limiting innovation as a whole." Now, Blake Schroeder, Esquire, CEO of Medical Marijuana Incorporated, trading on the OTC as MJNA, also commented, "The longer we prolong federal cannabis legislation, the more financial institutions will we see making similar statements as JP Morgan. At the first ever cannabis company to become publicly traded in the U.S. as well on the OTC markets, we've witnessed the many ups and downs of cannabis stocks over the years and have been pleasantly surprised that cannabis has been one of the few industries to come out of the pandemic ever stronger than before. And we've seen positive movement for the industry on both the federal level with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill and the many states level, including the recent passage of California AB 45. And we hope that financial institutions and regulators see clearly the positive movement that is happening around the world, and instead of making decisions like this that do more harm than help in keeping people safe from fraud, positively align. And we will continue to fight for fair access to financial services for as long as it takes." So that's definitely going to be a pretty big hit to this industry. It'll definitely be something to pay attention to come Monday, when again many of these JP Morgan clients will be forced to liquidate their assets within the cannabis industry. There will definitely be some big impacts to a lot of different players. I would expect a lot of even the indexes are going to be pretty heavily impacted by this. And it does, as all of those commentators sort of mentioned, it does seem like a massive step backwards, even as this industry continues to push forwards. But I'm sure that there will be some very negative impacts to the industry in the short term, but hopefully this will at least bring more attention to the industry, even from the investment side. And, unfortunately with everything, money does talk, and forcing people to sell their stakes in these cannabis companies, again, I don't know what the percentages will be and how much of an impact on which sides of the sector you'll see this really hit. But I do think that in general, this is going to do what many of regulations like this do in the past, which is piss people off who have money and who do have influence, and are also, trying to adhere to all of the very strict and sometimes inconsistent regulations that sort of plague the cannabis industry today. So I do think that you'll get a lot of pushback because of this. And hopefully that could lead to maybe a little bit more momentum behind some of the federal reform bills that many people have been eagerly expecting, and possibly push that along. But this also could be a sign that things are regressing to not the direction I think that many people in the industry want things to go, and that there could be some unfortunate turmoil for the industry as well over the next few months to years. That's all for today's podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.